What's up guys, Kennan from Goldman Motor Sales, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that is belt service in old Ferraris. Now, I happen to be a huge fan of older Ferraris, particularly ones like this, my dream car, the 1999 Ferrari 355 Spider. And of course, one of the big crutches of this car is that it needs a belt service. So I'm going to be talking to you about what that means, why it's not the end of the world, and if you're interested in this sort of car, how you can live with it. So the Ferrari 355 and all Ferraris before it required belt services. So what is a belt service? Well, the belt that you're changing is for the cams. So the cam timing on this car has two belts on the front of the engine that determine your exhaust and intake valve opening. Now these belts are made of rubber. Why rubber? Well, Ferrari felt that the rate this engine could rev, it was an older technique to use rubber that was a little more malleable and able to handle quick rev changes, whereas a change-driven system, it was believed, wasn't able to handle that. That ended up not being the case because Ferrari now uses change-driven systems, as they have since the F430. But at the time, belts were the standard. So one of the issues, of course, with where they're mounted is they're mounted on the front of the engine, way right against the firewall. Now, of course, you can't get to that with the engine in the car. So Ferrari has, in order to change them, it's recommended that you remove the engine from the car. This is usually about a $6,000 or $7,000 service, which is expensive, and it has to be done once every 5 years. However, there are ways around this. In this particular car, if you remove the fuel tank, you can access the timing belts and tensioners. This is one way a lot of independent shops help keep costs down to maintain engines like this. And again, it's just something that needs to be done either with time or with wear. Now, yes, it is a lot of money, but when you consider this to be done once every 5 years, let's say you're saving $1,000 a year for the service, you can easily cover it, or $2,000 will definitely cover the service to remove the engine from the car altogether. When the engine's out, usually you run into your things like you should do your valve cover gaskets, or you should do any basic maintenance that you do to a normal car. Because the engine's out, it's a lot easier to do that. Now, again, I'm not pretending that this is inexpensive. I understand that it is. And if that cost is off-putting to you, then I recommend you look at cars like Ferrari 360s that we have, or F430s, or something a little bit more modern. But on these older cars, what makes it worth it is the sound. A lot of the older V8 Ferraris have a really specific small displacement V8 sound that's just phenomenal. And also, there are a lot of legendary cars that have belts. The Ferrari Testarossa, for instance, has them. The Ferrari F40 has them. All sorts of old Ferraris that are really cool have them. So I certainly wouldn't hold the fact that a car needs a belt change against it. So here we're looking at a Ferrari 308, which requires the belt service just like the Ferrari 348 and the Ferrari 355. The big difference with this car is this belt service can be done with the engine still in the car. Now, the reason I'm hesitant to say can be is because your mechanic will probably hate you if you have them service the engine in the car. But it is possible to do. A lot of skin knuckles, but your cam covers are here, and you actually have the front one's very easy to get to, but that rear one's a little bit more tricky, but you can come up through the wheel arch and get to the belt on that side. And again, these cars require the belt service every 3 to 5 years. These are definitely a little more easy if you're looking to own a classic Ferrari, but you don't want to deal with exorbitant service prices. I definitely would recommend taking a look at the 308. Now let's go take a look at another 80s legend and talk more about its belt service. This is the flat 12 found in the Ferrari Testarossa, which still to me has to be one of the prettiest looking engines Ferrari has ever made. But just like the Ferraris we talked about so far, it requires a belt service. Now it's important to note with the Testarossa that there are different eras that they fall into. There's this one, which is the first generation Testarossa. There's the 512TR and the F512M. The benefit to having the standard Testarossa is that the engine can come out from the bottom. It sits in its own cradle and drops right out of the car. On the 512TR, they did away with the subframe so that they could mount the engine lower in the car and improve the center of gravity, which means they do drive better than the standard car. However, it means now because there is no subframe for it to come out the bottom of the car, it has to come out the top, which takes considerably longer, which means that the belt service costs for the 512TR are going to be higher than they are for the standard Testarossa. Same thing applies to the 512M, so it's just something to keep in mind if service costs are something you're considering when looking at one of these cars, but let's be honest, it looks so cool. So if you're like me and owning an older Ferrari is something that you want to do one day, then you have to consider the cost of having the belt serviced. It's a cost that you really can't get around, but it is something that you can plan for, and doing so makes the ownership experience a lot easier. Now, again, cars like these, there really isn't anything like it today. The sound, the looks, the pop-up headlights, the crazy horn, there just is nothing else like it. But if the service costs are off-putting for you, then you should look at one of our more modern Ferraris like 360 or the F430. For me, there's nothing like a Ferrari 355. And if you want to check out all of these cars, be sure to take a look on our website at marshallgoldman.com, and you'll be able to see all of the Ferraris we have in our inventory. As always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. As always, thanks for watching, guys.